Spring is the most important time of the year for any gardener, and here at Hamptons Estate Agents, we're feeling particularly excited. At the end of May, we're bringing our passion for homes to the Chelsea Flower Show, sponsoring a garden designed and built by Garden Club London. So whilst we cross our fingers for blue skies and another great British heatwave, what better way to celebrate than by getting outdoors, getting our hands a little dirty, and enjoying a breath of fresh air. I'm Anita Rani, a self-confessed property addict, and this is No Place Like Home, a podcast brought to you by Hamptons Estate Agents, home experts since 1869. In this episode, we're exploring the benefits of outdoor living with Tony Woods, founder of Garden Club London, and the botany geek himself, James Wong. Here's a question. How do you fit a rainforest in a teacup? Well, who better to ask than Instagram's most popular plant geek? James Wong is a beloved figure online, the proud owner of 500 houseplants. He teaches us how every home can become its own jungle. Nice to see you, James.
I think I'm going to have to hang out with you as my ego coach.
It's good, wasn't it?
I feel so much better about myself.
Yeah, you
after
should.
That.
I have built you up and now I'm going to crush you. No,
I'm
not.
prepared.
Not at all. I'm so excited that we actually finally get to sit down and have a chat. I want to start at the beginning. Where did your love for the outdoors and plants and botany start?
So it's a question I never really know how to answer. Mm-hmm. And I used to feel like in my 20s, when people used to ask me that I had to come up with some kind of origin story.
Yeah, like every good superhero.
Exactly, right? Or supervillain. Because, I am kind of, poison ivy wannabe. I used to think that, okay, well, I grew up in the tropics. So if you're in the tropics, you're around plants more often.
Where did you grow up?
In Singapore. So the plants are around you all the time. They're actively growing all the time. And so if you're exposed to something for more time, you're more likely to be interested, right? And then I also thought, well, my grandma used to take me around the garden in Borneo. My dad's from Borneo, and it's close to Singapore, so we used to go back. And she show me stuff. And in that environment, plants aren't like outdoor soft furnishing. Plants are useful objects. So she'd go through, it'd start to rain in the middle of the garden. She'd grab a palm leaf, 2 seconds of origami, you'd have a hat, She'd be like, this is good for a headache. This is for your lunch later. And one day I said to my brother, his fascination is football. And I said, Paul, has anyone ever said to you, Paul, what made you first interested in football? Did you have like a really inspirational teacher? Because that's what people say to me. Does it run in your family, this interest in football? And he's like, no, because football's obviously interesting and plants aren't.
Oh, ouch.
And I know, yeah, we had a fractured relationship. And
and I never spoke to him again.
I kind of thought, when he said that, I was like, oh, when people ask me that, it's because they think it's strange that I'm interested in plants. I think it's weird that people aren't interested in plants. Like every aspect of our basic instincts, our primary biology, like the fact that our eyes are on the front of our head rather than the sides like most herbivores, the fact that we could see red-green color vision, the very way we see the world is dictated by billions of years of coevolution with plants. They've made us who we are in every way. And they're the solution to every major problem that faces humanity, from climate change and biodiversity loss to food security to getting over the next pandemic. All of those things rely on plants. So I kind of feel like, well, I guess I have to use Instagram to try and convince people that plants are relevant and cool.
Yeah, my next question was going to be, how do you convince someone who has no interest in plants that they should have an interest? I think you've just done it.
That's kind of you. That's kind of what I try and do.
Plants are life.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to the way that we're taught about it.
Yes.
So animal scientists outnumber plant scientists these days, 500 to 1. There's no botany degree left in the UK as a straight botany degree.
No.
That closed 10 years ago. And this doesn't happen in other countries, but definitely has happened in the UK.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's how we tell people about plants. So one of the problems with people who really like plants is that I think that people who are fascinated by plants and people who have great social skills, those two bubbles, that Venn diagram very rarely crosses over. I'm particularly the kind of person that wants to get up on a soapbox and say, look at me. Like, we like plants because we don't like people.
So you're a rare breed, you're a rare species.
I don't know. I feel like it's important to do that, but I'm an introvert, and I also, the worst thing is getting recognized in a supermarket queue. It's like literally ruins my whole day having to be nice to strangers. So I try and do that. But when we learn about plants as a kid, what we do is we learn the photosynthesis diagram.
Yep.
I probably couldn't draw that right now, like off the top of my head, even though I should be able to as a botanist. When we learn about animals, we watch the magic of something being chased down on the Serengeti with David Attenborough.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. We have a problem of communicating how plants are interesting and why they're interesting. And we can take them for granted, particularly in the UK, ironically, because we love plants so much as a culture in terms of gardening. It's so easy to dismiss it as essentially like laying out doilies.
Yeah.
And like, you know those makeover shows where they would light the candles and chuck out the cushions at the last minute? That's how garden makeover treated plants. Like they had 3/4 of the show, everything else, and then they'd quickly bang the plants in and then bugger off. Then they'd quickly
You can say it's all right, don't worry. There's a lot of adults listening to this, but they won't mind. We can apologise if anyone.
Or here's what I said about botanists and social skills. It's just proving it.
What's an ethnobotanist?
Okay, so an ethnobotanist is a very misleading title, I think, but we're stuck with it. It's a type of botanist that specifically focuses on plant use. So loads of people assume that it's like, I guess, the origins of plants or kind of different genetic variations within plants because they think of ethnicity. It originally was the study of the botany of other cultures. It's just that other cultures always use plants. So a synonym is economic botany, which I would prefer, but we're stuck with it. We've used it for 100 years. So ethnobotany is the study of human plant use.
I have to say, ethnobotany sounds better than economic botany.
Oh yeah, it's like a bit cleaner and easier to say. So whether it's food, medicine, textiles, perfumery, I mean, there's so many specialisms because plants are used for so many things. Even like biofuel nowadays.
So give us some plants that have added benefits that people might not know about. Let's give some.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know. We've opened a whole can of worms, but let's just start with something really basic.
400,000 plant species on Earth. We don't really even know how many. It's an estimate because we record newly to science about 1,000 every year. So a lot to pick from. Off the top of my head, wormwood is an interesting one.
Okay.
So it's a common weed species. It's used, there are lots of different species within that, but one of them is commonly used in absinthe, for example. So if you've ever drank absinthe, you've drunk wormwood. It's a bitter chemical. For years...
So no, but don't start kind of trying to produce absinthe from wormwood at home.
You probably shouldn't. It can be toxic in large quantities as well, and there's lots of specific varieties. But when you buy it, that's what's in it, in the safe amount.
See, I'm all about using plants within the home, but maybe that's also because growing up in an Indian household, we understand that where food comes from and kind of using herbs and whatnot. But I have an aloe vera in my house.
Okay.
And I often just break it open and use what's inside it to rub on my skin. Is that a good thing?
There's actually loads of evidence for that, which is really exciting to hear. And it's one of the few plants, it's called a cultigen. There's a specific term for it.
What does that mean?
It means it's a plant that has been cultivated for so long that we actually have no idea where it's from in the wild. It's not found in the wild anymore. It's been so part of human history for that many thousands of years that it's only known in cultivation. We have no idea where in the world it comes from. And that happens with really very few plants, which can be in part of that list. And it's plants that have been cultivated for quite that long. So it shows how important it is to our species, to our civilization.
You have a huge following on Instagram. People want to watch you look after your 500 houseplants. How did all of that begin?
I'm not sure they want to watch me do it. I just think they want to...
What is that?
Yeah, I think they're really interested in the plants, and I give people advice about it.
Well, you're an excellent communicator, I think it's a combination, definitely.
I was originally sort of forced to do Instagram for work. People said, you have to do it. It's what all the cool kids are doing. I'm not a cool kid. I was like, I don't go to glamorous parties. I have a phobia until very recently of taking a photograph of myself. Like I literally had one that I had to do for a security pass, and my face is not happy at the time. It was literally impossible for me to take a photograph of myself. So I thought, what am I going to show people? I mean, I just sit at home on a Friday night, when it's raining outside, and like, poke my terrariums. I even have like long.
That's not a euphemism.
No, it's not. Like my OnlyFans account would not go well. Like I have all of these like long tweezers and long handle scissors.
Did you say OnlyFans or OnlyFerns?
OnlyFerns.
OnlyFerns, very good. Very good.
I have these like long paint brushes and I'll kind of like stroke the moss in them and I'll take out any little bits of things that I don't like. And to me, that's like my perfect Saturday night. And so I can show people that. And one of my colleagues said, well, just do that, James. I've given up. So I did that. And who knows, people actually want to watch that.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's a few reasons. I think people are there's been a big renaissance in the interest in plants. Yeah. And I think for one of the things that's definitely been a driver is social media. I think that the reason why social media has worked in doing it is because the traditional gardening media has lots of conventions. And it has lots of conventions that I think probably subconsciously, but I think sometimes intentionally isolate people. They exclude people. There's this idea that to be a good gardener, to be a proper, inverted commas, gardener, you have to have rolling acres of Dorset. You have to dress like a Victorian painter. You have to hold kind of tools that no one in actual commercial horticulture has used for 70 years. So it's all kind of all set at about 1880. And you have to kind of sow tomatoes every March in a dirty sweater. And, I like doing that, but there are many flavors. It's kind of, I love vanilla. It's one of my favorite flavors. But imagine if you had an ice cream store that only sold vanilla. Yeah. Like, what if you don't like vanilla? There's all these other flavors there. And I think conventional horticulture really sells something, it does it really well. It does it beautifully. It does it really convincingly to people who like vanilla ice cream. But guess what? There are other flavors out there. Yeah. And things like Instagram have allowed people to show that horticulture is so much more diverse and so much more interesting
and inclusive,
so much more global. And sometimes, in fact, quite often, I'm meant to feel like I'm the only person. So people will use lots of code words. They'll say you're not a proper gardener.
To you?
Yeah, all the time.
Shush.
Yeah, no, like it's very...
Because you have 500 indoor plants.
Well, there's lots of things. If you don't have a double barrel surname, if you don't wear a suit, people have definitely come up to me and fixed. The one time I did wear a suit, they come up and fix my tie, and like this guy grabbed like right here, and he goes, "This is how British people do it."
Shush.
And I was like, I just learned it on YouTube this morning. Okay, I've never done a tie in my life. So
do you feel like and how do you feel then as the outsider in an environment like that?
Well, at first, when I first started doing it, I didn't feel like the outsider because I guess I didn't pick up on the small social cues like the tie thing,
the microaggressions,
and then eventually you do pick up on them. And as you become, I don't mean to say this in an egotistical way, but as you become more successful, that happens more.
Yeah.
So then you notice it, and I think things like Instagram are just a clean slate. And I think that it's much more to a degree, I mean, there's the algorithm, but apart from that, it's much more democratic. So anyone can set up their own account and people like it or they don't like it.
Yeah.
They don't have to convince a gatekeeper about whether the end product, the end audience will like it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can go on to Instagram and I can learn about there's this Chinese account, and I think the guy's probably like in his mid-20s, and he does the most amazing bonsai. And then I can go to like the other side of the world to Brazil and see a company that's making these amazing swimming pools filled with koi. So they're natural swimming pools, naturally filtered. I would never see that in gardening media in the UK.
No,
it's you go
global.
all over the world. And you see things that it might be some guy's just back bedroom where he's doing stuff. So.
And you've done a new series for Instagram. You went to Singapore.
Yes. So I grew up there. And Singapore is really progressive in terms of its horticulture. It's invested a huge amount in trying to bring horticulture into the center of cities. So it's sort of about horticulture, but it's mainly about urban greening and how cities could be made greener. And it's something that I'd always wanted to cover. And I don't think that traditional media has allowed me to do that. But things like Instagram do. So I found this amazing couple in lockdown. It was a bit miserable. It was a bit grey. Spent a lot of time on the ground. And I found this couple who were doing these really, really beautiful photographs of Singapore. And I assumed that they were professional photographers. At the time, one of them was an English teacher and the other one was a graphic designer. And they just were taking photographs originally on their phones. And I just thought that stuff was so beautiful. I was like, guys, when lockdown ends, I'm going to come visit you. And we're going to make some amazing films about all the crazy, like parks and gardens that are hanging off the tops of skyscrapers, hotels that are completely wrapped in foliage.
Amazing.
We're going to make some stuff and we're going to show people because no one knows this stuff exists. I kind of thought, like, as I was meeting them, this is the biggest risk. I've just flown across the other side of the world and I've like signed up to do everything. And I don't know who these people are.
In fact, we actually met. You've done a lot of stuff traveling around. We've got to talk about the most random place. I was filming a documentary about the Japanese population decline. I was in this tiny ghost town. It was a ghost town. There was nobody living there. The whole point of me being there was that the population has declined so much that look at this town that was once thriving. Now there's nobody here. Only film crew until there's another film crew and it's you.
So I was there to film a very similar thing. I was making a series on the world's most expensive ingredients. And the most expensive fruit in the world is a melon that's grown in Japan. And the whole point is that this mining town had collapsed and there was no industry there. So they set up randomly melon cultivation as its thing. And I remember I arrived, I'd flown from London to Singapore, Singapore to Tokyo, Tokyo to Osaka, and then driven 7 hours to this random place. And I got out the car and I was like, that's Anita Rani.
Yeah.
It's weird to go over and say, hi, I've never met you before, but we work with the same people.
Yeah, we knew each other. And also, we were the only people there. I'm fascinated by Singapore and the way that the urban environment and green space works there, because it's conscious. They've done it on purpose. Can you just explain to people who don't know anything about the place?
Okay, so Singapore is an ex-British colony. It was part of Malaysia until the early 60s, and then it was kind of separated off. So there's a tiny island about half the size of London, with about half the population of London. It's incredibly densely populated, tiny city-state. And one of the fascinating things is, from its very conception, it was set up to be a garden city. They'd essentially decided to take a British model that had happened in the kind of late Victorian period and gone, you know what? The Brits kind of had a great idea with that, and then they abandoned it. We could do that here, but with skyscrapers and palm trees, couldn't we?
It's the future.
And I just kind of thought, like, if you try and think back to that era, that's just nuts in terms of the ambition. Like, let's take this really good idea that no one's ever tested before outside of Britain, kind of failed in Britain because they did a really good job and then they stopped doing it for some reason. But why don't we do it? And it was done essentially to attract foreign investment in and to also help improve the well-being of people who lived in a very, very overpopulated, poorly resourced concrete city. And in that time period, even since I was a kid, so, I was growing up in the 80s, which is only 20 years after independence. It's just kind of astonishing what they've been able to achieve. So it's now the world's most biodiverse capital city. When I was growing up, all of these animals that you'd learn about from books that were long extinct, that you'd have to go to Malaysia in the middle of a jungle to find, you now have otters swimming in the equivalent of like Canada Water's business bank fountains.
Amazing. So it's
hornbills
worked.
that are nesting in trees. Yeah, so they planted 1 million trees. Now they have some really strict planning laws. So if you build a new building, you have to create the same amount of green space as a minimum as the plot the building sits on, wrapped around the surface of the building. So you have these new buildings which are almost literally entirely covered in green jungles. And it kind of, you look at it and you just feel like, even when you're standing in front of it, you're like, is this CGI? Because I've only seen this in CGI. It's real. I can actually touch the plants and I don't quite believe it. So I kind of thought it was a shame that plant people all over the world never see that stuff. And Singaporeans take it for granted because that's just what buildings look like.
So great. Such great city planning, isn't it? It's just so forward thinking, and it's just, and also just the environment it creates for the people who live there.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about well-being, because, and what having plants around you can actually do for you.
For ages, there was some relatively good evidence from what we call observational trials that demonstrate that simply being around plants, simply looking at them, can have remarkable benefits, allegedly, on mental and physical health. But these are what we call observational trials, and I'll explain what that means. This is, let's look at health outcomes across a population, and let's plot them on a map, and let's see how close these outcomes are to parks, for example. And you can look at, and you can find that people who live closer to parks have better health outcomes. You can look at hospital healing rates, and you can look at whether the patients who have different outcomes had views of green space or not. However, an observational trial just looks at correlation. It doesn't mean causation. So, for example, rich people tend to live near parks.
Yeah.
And money and having access to wealth is one of the key determinants of health. So maybe, and particularly some of these trials were done in the US, maybe it's just they could afford private healthcare.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't actually have anything to do with the plants. Exactly. All of the different outcomes.
Yeah.
But now we've had what we call intervention studies, which are totally different. And what these do is they take a control group of people and non-control groups, so an intervention group, and they subject only that one group, they keep everything else the same, to adding plants to their life, and they're able to see a difference. And the most fascinating thing is, so this is so much better scientific evidence from a geeky plant science point of view, because I liked to believe the trials before, but we didn't know for sure. Now it's really quite conclusive, and it's coming out with everything. And one of the fascinating things is, in some studies, it appears that the plants don't even have to be real. People just have to perceive that there are plants around them.
What?
So if you chuck a bunch of blokes, it usually is blokes actually, on a treadmill or on a stationary bike, and you show them screens projecting images of the natural world, not only do they run for longer, the exercise feels easier. The mental health benefits which are associated with exercise, such as improved self-worth and reduction in stress chemicals, are enhanced when they exercise in a green view significantly more than if they just exercise. And it's not even a real green view. It's just a digital screen showing them something that looks like a green view.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's wildly fascinating.
Also delights me, and also it really comes back to that fundamental, we are part of nature. We need that grass underfoot, or even not even real grass. Just look at the grass. Yeah. Just pretend you imagine grass.
See, this is the thing. So we've evolved over billions of years to have a preferred ideal habitat. And in the same way that if you don't eat, or if you're exposed to stress, you have biological consequences to that. We've evolved to have a preferred habitat, which is green space. So when we're given that, it actually has significant wider effects.
What should someone grow if they want to just get something easy that they will be able to keep alive and maybe has some benefits to it as well? Okay.
Well, here's the first thing I'd like to question your question. I sound a little bit like a politician at the moment. I think lots of people have almost like an irrational fear about the fact that they kill plants. And I think it's from two things. One is the first plant they grow, when you ask people who say this, almost every time it's supermarket basil. Supermarket basil is designed to die, so you buy a new one.
It's designed to die.
Like they cram loads of tiny plants into a pot to give you the illusion of a really lush pot. And the idea is that they eventually start competing with themselves and die. So you buy another one. So you're hooked into buying plants. I think a lot of people buy that once, they kill it, they never go back again.
You're so right.
Their gateway drug is a bad experience, and we never get them on team horticulture. So firstly, the most important thing to know is that when I get together with all my geek plant friends, and I have some really talented, much more talented than me plant friends, people who work at the Royal Horticultural Society, people who work at Kew Gardens. Do you know what we talk about in the pub? All the plants we've killed. Oh, I tried again with this one. I couldn't figure, what's the secret? Oh, I've tried this.
Oh, you've made us all feel better now.
So exactly. First thing is, do not,
don't freak out.
In the same way that to bake a cake, you have to burn loads. You have to fail with plants. Secondly, the most important thing is to pick something that's really the opposite of supermarket basil, the thing that's almost indestructible. I'd start with something like snake plant, Sansevieria, or Aspidistra, cast iron plant, called it for a reason. They are all, I was once delivered an Aspidistra plant to my mum's house, and she wasn't in, so they put it in this cupboard outside and closed it in the box.
Yeah.
She didn't discover it, I think, for 2 months, opened it, and of course, like anything else would be dead. This thing was clinging to life, but not watered, not even any light. It wasn't happy. It was on its last legs, but it was still alive after 2 months in a dark box.
Brilliant.
So if it survives that, it'll survive anywhere.
Aspidistra. And what about something that we want to be able to cook with or make tea out of, or something that might have some added health benefits?
So I would go for Citrus hystrix. They call it muckroot lime. So if you want to go, like very often when you go to a houseplant section, there'll be lots of citrus plants. The citrus plant will cost you hundreds of times more than the entire amount of citrus fruit you will get out of that plant. However, if you're growing the leaves, muckroot lime leaves are used in like Thai cooking. They're used in the whole of Asian cooking. They're incredibly expensive to buy, but the plants aren't. So I'd grow something like that. It needs loads of light, so a really, really bright facing windowsill, but it'll give you more leaves than you could ever eat. And it's a flavor that maybe if you try and buy the leaves, they never taste as good as if you grow them.
Very true. James Wong, I have absolutely loved geeking out about plants with you.
Okay, usually people don't say that. I can actually see their eyes glazing over. I talk too much about
my
them.
eyes have done the opposite.
Okay,
they have come to
good.
life. You have absolutely sold your passion.
Oh, one more on Team Planky.
Yeah, I'm in. And I'm not going to fear plants anymore. I'm going to go home and, I have kept some alive. I just want to put that out there before people think that I am.
Judge you?
Yeah.
Oh, I've killed thousands and thousands. You just never post about that on Instagram.
Okay, I don't believe that you have killed thousands, but it's nice that you've said it to make the rest of us feel better. Are you up for a bit of a challenge?
What's the challenge?
The challenge is I'm going to give you 60 seconds on this stopwatch.
Oh, great.
And you're going to give us...
Give Asian people an exam challenge and expect them not to be nervous. I can just feel my mum never speaking to me again.
I was just going to say, and your mum is listening.
Oh, great.
As is my mum, so the pressure is on.
I have to get over 99%. Fine.
You've got 60 seconds to give us your 5 top tips to look after our houseplants. Are you ready?
Okay.
Your time starts now.
The top question people ask about houseplants is how much water. That's not the first question. It's how much light. Plants are living solar panels. That's one. If it's cacti, they have to be no more than 1 meter away from a window. In fact, probably almost touching the glass. Secondly, never put cacti in terrariums. It's the worst possible thing for them. Moss, ferns, orchids, low light needing plants go in those environments. Don't worry about watering your plants too often. It's much better to let plants dry out than to overwater them, and plants will normally tell you that.
Last one.
Oh gosh, what's the last one? Oh gosh, damn it! Oh no, my mum's watching this.
Pressure's up.
Don't get a houseplant just because everyone's getting it on Instagram. Just get what you like.
49 seconds. You smashed it. Your mum will be proud.
It's good because I can make up for failing GCSE maths. And, I'm 41. I've still not gotten over her anger from that.
James, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for being so passionate. I've loved it. Tony Woods is the Managing Director of Garden Club London, an author and passionate horticulturalist. He was awarded Young Garden Designer of the Year at the Chelsea Flower Show in 2013. And in 2022, Tony received an RHS Gold Medal for a garden sanctuary, a garden sponsored by Hamptons. Garden Club London, which Tony founded in 2012, is now one of the leading urban design studios in the UK. In 2023, they're returning to the Chelsea Flower Show with Hamptons, this time with a garden inspired by Mediterranean horticulture, landscape, and lifestyle. Welcome, Tony. Nice to see you. Before we get on to talking about the Mediterranean garden, let's hear a bit about your own backstory. When did you first become interested in gardening?
From a really, really young age. So I grew up in the countryside. I lived around farms and gardens and just instinctively knew that horticulture and gardening was something that I really wanted to do. So walked into the careers office at school, said what I wanted to do, and I think the careers advisor was a bit like, well, wait a minute, we need to discuss this. So probably one of the few people that kind of had a natural direction, if you like.
Yeah, because who knows when they go and see the careers advisor what they want to do. Whereabouts in the country was that? Where were you?
That was in the Lake District, so masses of inspiration. Natural water, landscape, just massive inspiration. So a lot of that kind of fed into the designs that I've created for shows in the past or the shows that we do now. So in our last garden for Hamptons, it was very naturalistic. It was very immersive in nature and woodland.
Yeah, I think if you grow up in a place like the Lake District, you can't help but be inspired and be used to outdoor living because you've got such beautiful nature on tap.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. It's the sound, it's the smell, it's, you know, in the winter, in the summer, it's so different as well. And a lot of the work that we do now is very much about the detail and attention, but you can look in something like a dry stone wall and just found so much inspiration. And then did higher education part-time. When I finished that, I literally packed my backpack, got on the train to London, applied for some jobs, worked for a few companies for a couple of years. But what I saw more and more was just that we were having like really hard landscapes, so lots of paving, lots of walls. And when I was sent there to plant them, clients would be like, oh, can we have some more greenery, some more planting? And I was like, well, yeah, that's what gardens should be about, especially urban gardens. So then I established Garden Club in 2012 with the intention of it being very plant focused, which it is. And often people say there is something different about your gardens. I can't put my finger on it. But if you Google garden designers in London, all of our gardens are the green ones. They're full of plants, and we only drop in essential hard landscaping. So it's very, very immersive and naturalistic. I was kind of quite a young entrepreneur, so I'd be like selling my plants or selling.
So you weren't bothered about collecting and swapping football stickers. For you, it was seeds.
Yeah, I had a football sticker album, but just to try and fit in a bit more. So yeah, if I had like my poor brother would be like, we'd be driving in with my parents at the weekend, and he'd be like, we'd go past a nursery or a garden centre, and he'd be like, please don't stop, please don't stop, please don't stop. And then he'd just like look back on his frustration of like how embarrassing it was to have a brother who was like so obsessed with plants.
And how old were you?
12, 13.
What was that?
Just an obsession with plants, really. And I think, but now, one of the reasons that Garden Club London is called Garden Club London is because when I was at school, I joined the school garden club, and there were about 4 of us. But we got kind of the mick taken out of us. We got bullied. It was like, it's such a sad thing to do. Whereas now, gardening in schools is massive. It's so cool to garden. It's so cool to grow things.
You look at a space outdoors and see what you can do with it. I look at a space outdoors and just freak out.
I play a movie in my mind of what this garden looks like when it's finished. So
I love that.
I walk through it. I brush against the plants. I smell the scents. I hear some water. And you kind of zone out sometimes from a client when you're stood there in this barren backyard, and you have to kind of play this movie and like kind of get as many ideas down on paper as you can.
So how did the collaboration come about with Hamptons?
So we approached Hamptons and said, look, we've got this concept for a show garden at Chelsea. We think it works really well with what you do with people's home and changing habits. So the idea was that you'd have a really kind of short but tranquil commute over a stream and through this naturalistic garden. You get to a yoga deck, and then you cross the yoga deck and you get to this really amazing garden studio home office with log burning stove, with a beautiful view of a pool.
When am I moving in?
When we talk to Hamptons, or it's Hamptons are our client. We have an imagined client, and will it live up to the expectations? So for me, it's kind of the pressure's on, and you do doubt. You have to question yourself continuously. And at Chelsea, you have the added stress of seasonality, snow in March and April, cold temperatures, plants flowering too soon, plants flowering too late. The whole logistics of doing something that would usually take 14 weeks in about 2 weeks. But at the end of it, you have this piece of magic, and it's quite overwhelming and emotional as well when you kind of stand back and see it for the first time.
So tell us about the Mediterranean Garden that people will be able to go and see this year.
When we completed the last garden, Hamptons have been really fun to work with, and again, I think now people are starting to travel more or explore a bit more. So FIlippo is going to design a garden this year,
and this is FIlippo Dester.
Yeah,
tell us about him.
When I'm the chaos, Filippo is the calm, who has the plants. He has he has the hose pipe. He has everything ready to go. So over the last couple of years, we've kind of started to hand the baton to some of our other younger designers. So this time, Filippo, who's Italian, who is an absolutely mad keen plantsman like myself, it felt really natural that he should kind of take the baton, take the design forward, and create this garden. And it works really well, and so many levels of lifestyle, of aesthetic, but also messages like climate change, so drought-tolerant planting, sustainability, preserving water in the garden as well.
Well, this is really interesting territory because a lot of our listeners who are keen gardeners will be thinking about sustainability. So what little tips can you give them?
So I went to the garden centre at the weekend and I thought, wow, look at all these like plastic pots. We're still buying them, but then we buy a plant and we throw the pot away. So I think working as a community and with free cycling schemes, you can get so many free plants. But again, just using yogurt pots, using containers, using takeaway trays to propagate seedlings. A, saves you money. B, it's great for the environment. When you do manage to grow something or you haven't killed something, then that's massive. And that's a big message of the Hamptons Mediterranean Garden. It's that Mediterranean lifestyle of coming together, of sharing, of the way you prepare the food together. You harvest what's in season. And that is really healthy. And anyone can do that at home, whether it's growing potatoes in a bucket or something in a window box or planting an apple tree in your garden. You know, it's got longevity and it's got something that will come year after year.
I am going to share with everyone listening that I admitted to Tony, which is probably the worst thing you can do when you've got a garden expert coming on to say I'm deaf to all plants, which I am, or I have been. But during lockdown, I absolutely got involved in planting and growing, and it was the most satisfying, nurturing thing to be able to do, to watch my plants grow and my tomatoes come and my potatoes come and then cook them. It was, the well-being aspect of it was huge. And like you say, you touched on that with your Mediterranean garden, that outdoor lifestyle. Let's explore that a little bit more. Like, what is it about the Mediterranean garden and the lifestyle that is so beneficial?
I think ultimately a lot of it is linked to the diet, but if we look at sustainability of the diet and the food, so within the Hamptons Mediterranean Garden, we've got, we're not growing like lots of lettuce and salads and things that need lots of water and lots of care. We're growing lots of very kind of naturalized fruit and berries and nuts. There are things that you can forage or harvest from the garden. The key to a Chelsea garden is you have to walk into it and just be immersed in an atmosphere.
Yes.
So if the atmosphere isn't there, then you failed. So,
and also outdoor living with all the great produce that you've grown, that you've nurtured, that you know is good for you, and surrounded by community, people that you love and that you want to spend time with in that environment.
Gardening communities and gardening in the community, that again is so important for people's health. It can combat loneliness. This year we've seen a huge trend in apps where you can garden share, so you can borrow someone's dog and take that for a walk, and you've been able to do that for a few years. And now if you're perhaps less mobile or you have a garden you're overwhelmed with, we've got huge allotment waiting lists. So people are kind of saying, well, you can come and cut my grass or enjoy the garden or grow some veg. And I think that's brilliant.
Tony, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and good luck at Chelsea.
Thank you very much.
Now, I'm particularly pleased we've had the opportunity to talk not just about gardening, but also the positive impact it can have for mental health and well-being. As we've discussed, outdoor living can give us time to unwind, to offer care to something living, and to reap the rewards of green space and those beautiful blue skies. With this in mind, Hamptons are proud to be celebrating our partnership with Mind. Founded in 1946, Mind is the largest mental health charity in the UK, and since last year, Hamptons have been working to raise funds and spread awareness. For expertise on mental health treatments and advice, or if you'd like to donate, you can visit Mind at mind.org.uk. Now, that may well be all we have time for, but you can join the conversation online using our hashtag #NoPlaceLikeHamptons. And if you've been inspired by our episode, we would love to see your gardening progress, from blossoming beds to terrace terrariums. Thank you to my wonderful guests, James Wong and Tony Woods. And thanks to you, our listeners. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow Hamptons on social media. We're here for you, whatever your property journey. But for now, until next time, I'm Anita Rani, once again reminding you that there is no place like home.